Happy sunny summer harvest day here at Blue Heron Hill. I'm Sue and welcome to my garden. I'm under my bean arbor right now, getting a little respite from the hot summer day here. I have been picking beans, so I can officially say summer harvest is here. But a nice fistful. We have some yellow wax beans and we have some purple potted pole beans. Now the purple ones are great because you can see them a lot better in the foliage, but they do turn green when you cook them. Anyway, so to me it's officially harvest time in my garden when I can start picking green beans. But what I really wanted to talk about today, as I was out surveying what crops are getting close to being able to get a harvest from, I was looking over at my squash plants. There are a ton of male flowers on my squash plants. I got them in a little bit late. I had some problem with some critters or something and biting just the tops of my squash plants out. So I had to replant them, and so they got a late start. But I have a ton of male flowers. Did you know that squash plants have male and female flowers? A lot of people do. Some people are surprised at that. They are in the cucurbit family. That includes squashes and melons, like zucchinis and your winter squashes and your pumpkins and spaghetti squash and acorn squash and cucumbers, even cucumbers. So, and they all have male and female flowers on one plant. I'm going to give you a little anatomy lesson today on the cucurbit family of plants, the squashes and the melons. Let's first talk about the male blossoms, okay? They are on a long, skinny stem, and they usually come up above the plant. It just reaches high above the foliage on the plant. Flowers look about the same on the male and the female. But in the male, as you unfold the petals of the flower, on the interior, there's a small, narrow protrusion, and it's covered with pollen. This is called an anther, and it differs from the female flower. So we'll get to that in a minute. Now, the bloom time, as is indicated on my plants, is earlier than the females. Now, my theory is that the male flowers come up and they sit above the foliage. This attracts the pollinators to this plant. Now, the pollinators are going to keep coming back to this plant time and time again because of these male flowers. I think there's probably at least 5 times as many male flowers as there are female flowers. So when you talk female flowers, these flowers stay down closer to the vine part of the plant or the base of the plant if it's a bush variety, say of zucchini or yellow squash. They stay down deep near the soil level. That's because the fruit is going to develop on that portion of the female flower. It bears the fruit. So it has a shorter stem that's closer to the center of the plant or to the vine part. And there is a small swollen bulb that's very close to the base of the flower. I'll be putting in some pictures here. And this looks like the immature fruit. It's actually an embryo. And this embryonic fruit is, once it's pollinated, that's what's going to grow and give you your fruit, your zucchini or your yellow squash or your pumpkin or your cucumber. So inside, if you open up the petals on the female flower, you will see a small little center stalk again. It looks more like a flower on the inside, and it is oftentimes a little darker orange color than, say, the male flower. And this is called the stigma. And so when we have our pollinators, they bring the pollen from the male flower over to the female, deposit it on this stigma, and from there it fertilizes that embryo, and then our fruit starts developing. So, simple little anatomy lesson. So we really need these pollinators. So it's important in your garden to have the pollinators that are attracted first to that male flower, and then when the female flowers comes up, they will then know to search for them. So it's helpful all the time to plant flowers, bright orange flowers, yellow, red flowers that are going to attract those pollinators. In my garden, oftentimes I plant marigolds. Early blooming flowers are a great source of drawing in those pollinators to our garden. Now, if you don't have a lot of pollinators, it's very easy to self-pollinate these squash plants. And all you have to do is take a Q-tip or a paintbrush, or even use the little anther on the male flower, strip off all of the outer petals, and take that and put it into the interior of a female flower to transfer that pollen directly onto that stigma of the female flower to get that little embryonic fruit to start growing. Very simple, if you think you're lacking pollinators in your garden, to do it that way. Or you take a paintbrush or a Q-tip, transfer the pollen from the anther over to the stigma. Simple if you want to get fruit. Now, I had trouble with getting my plants started. You have pests that will attack those cucurbit family of plants, and a way to protect them would be to put row covers on them. But if you put row covers or insect covers on them, you're not going to be able to get the pollinators there to do their jobs. So you're going to have to hand do that. There are things like the squash vine borer. Cross my fingers, I've never had it. But there are ways of trying to mitigate the damage that little thing can do. Some gardeners wrap the stems that are close, where it comes out of the ground. They wrap those in a kind of a tape or something like that to keep the vine borer that lives in the soil, will hatch and grow in the soil. Stops them from taking, boring their hole into the vine and starting to do their damage. If they've already started to do the damage, you can split open that vine, dig out that nasty little creature. But then as the vine further on up, you can place that vine into the soil, cover it up with a little mound of soil, and it will root there. So hopefully then that particular plant can then take root and live on, and you won't have to give up that entire plant. You can put collars around the bases of your plants. There's a cutworm that will do that, and actually they cut right through and they kill the whole plant. But if you just take like a cardboard tube when you first plant that seedling and put it in the ground, put that around there, and that will stop cutworms from then gnawing at the base of your stem. If your fruits are dropping off, I did mention oftentimes it's because they have not been pollinated yet. Another reason why they may be rotting and popping off is because there is a great fluctuation in the amount of water that they're getting. They get flooded and then they dry out and are parched. So that soil needs the moisture, it also needs oxygen in it. So if you flood your area and make it really sopping wet, there's no way for the oxygen to stay in that soil. So a little bit of water is good, but too much water is bad. And no water is still bad. So you don't want them to become waterlogged. Another thing to keep things like mildew away from your plants, and that's a big thing. I know I've suffered with mildew, powdery mildew on my cucumbers. You need good airflow around them. Also, you don't water from above. Water at ground level underneath the leaves. If you water, even if you water in the early morning, some of the water stays on those leaves, and you'll get these droplets, and they'll almost act like a magnifying glass in some cases, and they'll burn your leaves. Never good for a plant. I like to pick my squash when it's young and tender, because the bigger it gets, the bigger the seeds. The center will develop those seeds. What a plant wants to do is perpetuate itself and make seeds for the next generation. We don't want the plant to do that, so we need to pick those fruits young. Your seed packet should tell you, what the plant is for. If you are growing cucumbers for pickling, you don't want the big ones. You don't want them to have seeds developing inside them. You want to pick them short and compact, even a little on the harder, the crunchier side. Now, if you have a slicing pickle, maybe you want a little bit more water, a little bit more juiciness to your cucumber. So if the plant figures out that, yay, I'm big enough now and I'm growing seeds, it'll trigger it to stop production of any more fruits. That's why when you get these giant zucchini bats, that plant's going to say, yep, I'm done. So I always pick those zucchinis really small, no more than 6 inches. Same with yellow summer squash. Winter squash, on the other hand, you want the winter squash to go until the plant has decided, yep, don't need this anymore. Because winter squashes are supposed to harden off. And you shouldn't need to pick them until they lose that shininess. They're kind of glossy and very hard. The rinds are hard. You can almost barely stick a fingernail into it. Another thing to do with squashes, if you have the room, let them grow out on the, trail everywhere. But if you have trellises, have them grow up trellises. Cucumbers growing up trellises it's a wonderful thing. You keep that fruit off the ground. The cucumbers themselves are not that heavy. They can hang down. Now, if you do have things like pumpkins and some of these heavy winter squashes, they may need a little bit of help in staying on the vine and not pulling off. Sometimes I put those netting and make a little sling for it and attach it to my trellis to kind of give it a little bit of support so there's not so much stress on that vine. Anyway, just out here picking. I do have one summer squash that's starting to grow, a yellow crookneck, and I also have a zucchini. It's one of the round ones. It's called an 8-ball zucchini. They're fun to grow. And you pick them young. You pick them the size of maybe a tennis ball. And those two I have growing in the garden right now. So that kind of triggered this idea that with the male flowers and the female flowers, maybe not everybody knows about that. Anyway, I hope you found this informative. And until the next time that we can go digging in the dirt, Happy gardening. Bye.